I have the privilege of getting Mr. Robin Luton today. We have Grant Luton today. A couple of you might know who he is, but he has taught technology education on in high school. Also, let me turn on my prompter properly. He's in high school, also in levels. I'm embarrassed when we're going through this. I'm trying to tell him some technical things, and I'm realizing who I'm talking to is a little embarrassing. He's done this for 30 years, including one whole year in England as a Fulbright scholar, 1 year at Kent State University School of Technology. He served for 10 years as the assistant executive director for the National Museum of Education, formerly the Partnership for America's Future Incorporated. Grant is an accomplished pianist as well as a published author whose books are presently sold internationally. Home Bible study. This one, you guys, you think that little Bible study at your house could mean nothing. Well, this little Bible study that he started in 1994, it grew to become Beth Tikkun Messianic Fellowship in Ohio, which he led for 26 years. And after his retirement in June of 2022, Grant launched his Torah Today Ministries, a teaching ministry that has viewers and listeners from all around the world. Grant has been married to the same lovely bride since 1979 and has 3 children and 2 grandchildren. Thank you so much for being with us today. I so appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me. Yes.
This is really fun.
Yeah, I'll try to do as good a job as Robin did. She just took to this. She's the one who always avoids the camera. And yet, when we hit the record button or she gets in front of the camera, she just lights up and I have to re-record and get it right. But thank you for having me, Charlie. It's wonderful.
It's been so great. I want to hear, how did this come about for you? How did you find our Messiah in Torah? Like, how did that happen? Because the Old Testament's gone away with. How did all of a sudden it come alive to you and you become this whole Bible believer?
Well, I'd always seen the types, the pictures of him to a degree. Well, I would read, especially the book of Exodus. That is, to me, it was the book I read in my teens to help me to understand what salvation is and how it operates. But I always saw myself as a New Testament Christian, but I had so many questions about how to live life. Um, I wanted to know more about how to live daily life because I had Christian friends from the whole spectrum of denominations, and they all live life a different way. They all dressed a different way. They all emphasized different things. But it was a trip, my first trip to Israel in 1992, that well, I would say my world turned upside down. I should say it turned right side up. And I began to realize that Jesus was not a Western 20th century Christian evangelical. Um, he just, that is not who he was. And, but he was a Jew. And I wanted to understand more about his religion. I knew there were issues with Judaism. I'd seen errors in Judaism. I saw plenty of errors in the denominations I had been involved with. But when I was there, I was determined I was going to learn about Judaism and I was going to learn Hebrew. In fact, that was a supernatural drive that God just put right in my heart. It was, to me, it was like you can eat and sleep or you can learn Hebrew. I'll take Hebrew first. And
Wow.
an amazing thing happened. That summer I was in Israel in 92 was the summer that they took the junior high I was teaching at and turned it into a grade school. So I didn't have a job there, but I had tenure. So they bumped me up to the high school and I had 5 study halls a day, which for most teachers would drive them off the deep end. They would just be suicidal. But here I'm getting paid a full salary and studying Hebrew all day and reading books about Judaism. And so that's the way it was for 2 years. And by the end of that 2 years, I had worked through the entire Torah, just word by word, and reading a book on the Hebrew grammar and it was a passion. There was no stopping me, and I just worked through it. And the more I learned about Judaism, the more I learned Hebrew, the more the New Testament went from black and white to living color and 3D. And it was a life-changing experience.
I I'm interested to hear when all of a sudden became seamless to you
Yes.
and it became alive to you. Did you find that the things that were contradictory were no longer contradictory?
Yeah. God wasn't schizophrenic.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
It's like there's this mean God. Jesus comes to save us from God because
Yeah,
Jesus.
nice Uncle Jesus comes to save us all.
But then when you get to Revelation, Jesus turns mean. I mean, it's like this. It just
Who
didn't
can you trust? Who can you trust?
talk about it because it sounds sacrilegious now, but you begin to realize God is gracious from Genesis to Revelation. He's filled with grace, wisdom, truth, righteousness, and it's just consistent. Like you said, it's seamless. But I couldn't see how it flowed together before. I wasn't equipped with the right tools to see that. And but I know Robin expresses it better than me, but she had really begun to have some serious doubts about her faith and about who God was and about the Bible itself. But when she realized it's one God, it's one mind all the way through the scriptures, she just she wept. I was there when that realization hit her, and there's just no looking back, no looking back at all. It's been the greatest adventure of my life.
This is so fun to hear. And I'm sure during this adventure there have been some moments
Oh,
that you probably are like, what do you call palm to forehead, right? Oh, what was that? What happened? It gets a little messy.
I don't have the air anymore.
A lot of us might go extreme, like, oh my gosh, I have to change my whole house. We have to like become fully Jewish, or oh, I have to whatever. There's been fun moments that you can look back on now, I'm sure. Even, I mean, I have them still. Can you share a few of those with us that are just some of those messy moments in this transition?
Yeah, well, the more messy ones came later when this little Bible study I was leading, and I said, "Hey, would you like to start learning the Torah portions and the uh, holy days?" And we did that for a year, and then they said, "Let's do it a second year." And then they said, "Let's do it a third year." And before we knew it, we'd become this little congregation. So we were all making our mistakes together. It wasn't me on display trying to tell everybody to do it. We were all figuring it out together. But oh my goodness, as Beth Cocoon grew, it grew very quickly.
Hmm.
And but I have to tell you this. I have to preface everything with this. Um, Robin and I went to a retreat in this couples class thing where they do these tests to see where your strengths and weaknesses are. And when it tested these main areas, and when it came to people skills and leadership, I didn't have a pulse. I had zero in both categories, nothing. It was like that part of my brain wasn't there. So here I am, and I had to laugh. I said, "So Lord, you pick somebody with no leadership skills, no people skills, to lead people," and we just had to laugh about that. And but God gave me a love for people, and I because I didn't know anything about leadership, I just really leaned into God for this, and He blessed it. So before we knew it, this congregation had grown, and because I'm a school teacher and I love questions from the kids, we always let people ask questions. So I would sit down when I taught, people could raise their hands, and even when we got up to a congregation of over 200 people, people are raising their hands and asking questions. And it was wonderful. So it was in those times that we really had some interesting encounters with people. I
I'm
remember,
sure.
yeah, there was a an elderly lady. It's funny, I call people elderly because I'm in my 70s now. And but anyways, there was an elderly lady, and she'd been visiting for a couple of months, and she's always sat like right up front. And after the teaching, we would have oneg, we'd have a meal together. So I don't know what prompted her to raise her hand. She raises her hand and She says, I brought a pork roast to share with Oneg. Is that okay? And I tried to be real gracious, and I said, well, thank you for being so gracious and bringing that. I appreciate that, but no, I'm afraid we're just not going to be eating that yet. And instead of saying okay, she says, but Jesus changed all those laws. We can eat whatever we want now. Now there's 200 plus people sitting here listening to me having this conversation with this little lady, and and I said, no, ma'am, it's still an abomination to him, and because she kept persisting. And
Hmm.
there's a young man here who had listened to the teaching just last week from years ago, and he's reminding me of all of this. So that's why it's fresh in my mind. But we were always having these little encounters like this, trying to be gracious to these newcomers coming in, and but there were always people who thought I wasn't strict enough. And then there were others who had kind of religious spirit that say, you don't, you make this more military and everything. But my motto has always been walk, don't run. And in a flock of sheep, you've got some up closer, you have some trailing behind, some to the right, some to the left. As long as the whole flock's moving the same direction, we'll get where we're supposed to be going. And so that's probably not one of the funniest things that happened, but oh my goodness, there's so many. I think some of the most weird encounters are with wolves that come. And once a flock starts getting to a certain size, the enemy will send wolves.
Hmm.
And we've had some really strange encounters with them. And that's with any congregation of people who are trying to follow God.
And
Messianic.
it's difficult once you spot those. It's like everyone's watching you to see how are you going to handle this. And a lot of times I've seen leaders um, I've seen leaders then will spare the wolf for the flock, and they realizing they don't want to offend someone, realizing as a shepherd or as a leader, you have to realize you have to think of the greater good and that how, the damage that that one wolf can do to an entire flock.
Well, it reminds me when I came into this, I did not want to become a pastor. I caused pastors enough grief in my young years. I thought I don't want to be on the receiving end of that. But some of the folks in our small group said, "Well, Grant, this has become our church. This small Bible study is our community. Why don't we
Mm-hmm.
just rent a building, get a name, and you'll be the pastor?" And it's like, no way, this isn't going to happen. And they said, "Why don't you just pray about it?" And I said, "Why pray about it? God's going to say no." I mean, I knew I had no leadership skills, for Pete's sake. But anyways, finally I prayed. I said, "God, if you'll open the doors, I'll walk through them." And the doors just pop, 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 pop. They just all opened up. And before you knew it, we were in a building. We rented a building. And here I am pastoring a flock. And I remember so distinctly, Charlie, at that point thinking, God, how is this going to end? I can't see this ending well. How is this going to end? When is it going to end? And 26 years later, God finally put in my heart, it's time to retire. And there's a great young man, Tim Pell, who stepped in and he came up in the congregation, has taken my place, doing a wonderful job. And we still attend there, and I help support him and mentor him, and he's doing a great job with the community. But going back to my early days, I said, God, how do you pastor a flock? I've seen it done every which way of wrong that you can imagine. But how do you do it? And he kept saying, shepherd my sheep, shepherd my sheep. And I studied, what does that mean? It means two things. You feed the sheep and you protect the sheep. And I said, Father, I'll do those two things. Because I felt confident I could do that. I'll feed them. I love to study and teach the word. And I'll protect them. And I stuck to those two things. I never did a third thing those whole 26 years. I just fed the sheep, protected the sheep. And you know what I found out? I found out if sheep are healthy, if you feed the sheep, they're healthy. they reproduce. I mean, not just physically, but they're telling other people. And I thought of all the years in church when pastors would kind of crack the whip over the sheep, get out there and share the gospel and lead others to the Lord. And now I realize if sheep aren't leading other people to become sheep, they're not healthy sheep. But when
Right.
they're healthy, you can't stop them from sharing their faith and bringing others in. So I
Well,
just,
it's obvious. If any of you if you're in Ohio, I highly recommend. It's outside of Akron. Is that correct?
yes, yes, the Akron area.
The Akron area for Beth Tikkun. I've had the privilege of being at the first women's meeting after COVID. That was a blessing. I was able to come and share that with that. And what an amazing group of people. And it's a huge testimony to have been there for so long.
Yeah,
That is a testimony to those two principles.
yes, yeah, yeah.
It is.
You know, I remember one time, I forget exactly what it was, but in the first year of my leading this group, I thought I would get the sheep to perform. And I decided I want everybody to start doing a certain thing. I forget what it was now because it was silly, but it had something to do with, I don't know, wearing kippas or prayer shawls or something. And no, they didn't let me do that. The sheep thought, no, we'll do this on our own. And I realized I'm trying to get the sheep to perform. And you know, have you ever been to a circus where they have performing sheep? I've never seen them. No.
I
But
just watched what it takes for one of those cattle dogs to corral sheep, and
yes,
it,
right, right.
yeah, I can't imagine. Yeah, no, it's like herding cats, I think.
Yes, but so many Messianic groups and church groups, they want performing sheep. Everybody's going to do this at the same, and it's going to be clones. And it's like, no, because think of Jacob's flock when he was working for Laban. Spotted, speckled, striped. They're no two alike. They were a motley looking group. They were the misfits, but boy, they were productive. They were
Mm.
fertile. And I thought that is what a healthy congregation looks like. And all through Beth Tikun's years, we had all ages, all races, nationalities, and uh, from the whole social spectrum. And we had had people visit over the years, and speakers come in, and they would look, and they say, "This looks like a little slice of the kingdom of God."
Mm.
That's the highest compliment anybody could have paid Beth Tikkun. And I thought, this is Jacob's flock.
Absolutely. Not, and probably a little bit of the misfits part, because I know your wife. So
Just the misfits.
absolutely the misfits. I embrace that. I always love me some good misfits. Before I ask you the next round, we're going to go through a speed round to get to know you a little better. Because I really want everyone before you leave this podcast to go over to YouTube. I want you to find Torah Today Ministries, where all go to the org. First of all, go there. I want you to subscribe, put the little bell so you know when the new things are coming up. That's a must because you do not want to miss those teachings that are on there. Go in there and just binge on your walks and treadmills or whatever. That it's such solid teaching that I can't say that enough. But I want to ask you before we go in our speed round, what are you writing now? What's got you studying and excited?
Well, I'm working on the second volume of the Genesis commentary I'm doing. The first volume's out. There's going to be three in all if I live long enough. And the second volume's been languishing because there have been some career changes and starting Torah Today, and so it kind of got pushed to the back burner. But I'm cracking on that book again now, and I want to get that second volume done. It's just a few chapters short of completion. So, but there's
That's
so
going to
much.
be exciting. That's going to be exciting. So now everyone go get the first volume so that you can be caught up by the time the second volume comes out. So the speed round we're going to hop into is tell me something completely useless that you have memorized and it's still memorized and it's totally useless taking up space.
Something I've memorized. You mean in life?
Anything, just totally anything in your life. What if you have memorized? You're like, that was totally useless, and it still comes up every once in a while. Can you think of something?
In the sleigh thee toves, the gyre and gimble in the way, and all mimsy with the boar grows and mama raves all great. How's that? I
That's
memorized
perfect. That's perfect.
I don't know. It's just stuck in
That's perfect.
my brain.
You're like, why? Why is that taking space?
I just one of those things.
That's so funny. So, on a scale of 1 to 5, how adventurous would you say you are?
Oh, five,
A five?
five, six.
Do you, 5 or 6? Okay. Are you someone who follows directions, or do you kind of improvise?
Yes.
Yes.
I follow directions, but I have the, and Robin, she'll tell you, I always think I can improve on the directions.
Oh, okay.
And I'll say, well, why didn't they do it this way? This is a better way to do it. So I'm always improvising. Once in a while, it actually works. I'm adventurous and I love to improvise too.
That's really fun. So this for some reason this question has become one of the funnest questions randomly. M&Ms,
Mhm.
do you eat them by the handful or one at a time?
The older I get, I start eating by a handful. Time's growing short.
That's good. We've gotten every answer from separating them one at a time by color, and then we're like, is red made out of, is it kosher or is that clean? I don't know if that red is red dye number. So, so we've had some fun conversation. What is something that you really, 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 really wish you liked, but you just don't like it?
Oh,
Like you want to like it,
the
but you just
vegetables
don't.
that Robin likes. She loves
Okay.
she loves broccoli and asparagus and cauliflower and all that. And to me, I eat them like I have to take medicine. But I don't enjoy it. But she loves all that healthy stuff. I wish I enjoyed it more.
You sound like my husband. He's averted. If it's green, he's kind of has an aversion, and we're the same.
But asparagus, it's like eating boiled pencils. It's just
Where is your favorite vacation spot? I might know the answer to this one.
oh yes, Sedona, Arizona, outside of Israel. So
Well, correct. Right. Is that even yeah, outside of Israel, Sedona, Arizona, we share that. We share that love for that location. So in Israel, tell me 2 of your favorite spots there.
we of course anything in Jerusalem, but we love Sfat, which is never on the agenda when people take tours of Israel. Safat is north of Sea of Galilee and a little bit to the west. And it's kind of a hippie colony sort of place, and a lot of art galleries and great shopping. But the great sages of Israel, most all of them are buried right there in Safat.
Oh,
And it's a very spiritual place in the Jewish mind. And we just always love going there. It's a beautiful view it's up on top of a mountain, and but it's one of those places that the Christian tourists never go to. So that's one, and but almost anything in Jerusalem is really special.
that's nice.
Uh,
That's
oh,
nice. I love that.
the other would be Hebron, the Abraham
Okay.
Paris tomb. Yes, that's another place most tourists don't get to because it's a little dodgy getting there sometimes.
Mhm.
But Hebron is an incredibly spiritual place.
Who are some of your favorite teachers?
Oh, Rabbi Manis Friedman is one of them, and uh, uh, Rabbi Tots, South African. Those two are really hard to beat for me. Now, neither of them are messianic, but I can, knowing the New Testament scriptures, I can always supply and fill in the gaps that they're left in their teachings. But the messianic teachers, Daniel Lancaster is definitely one of my favorites. He's also a dear friend, a great
That's
writer.
wonderful. We love Rabbi Friedman, and I'm always being mindful to say, and you'll just know this is not messianic, and you will need to spit out the bones. So, like with, I mean, I read a lot of things. So, you just mature. If you're not mature enough to spit the bones out, it's not time for you to start that yet. Just, yeah,
Well put.
yeah. If you're not ready. So is there anything, this is the last question, is there anything this year that you have changed your mind on?
Oh, boy. Can you get back with me on that one?
Yeah. Yeah, that'll get you something. There's your thoughts for your journaling
I'll tell
for.
you what, one of the things I always try to keep is an open mind. So I'm used to changing my mind and looking at things from a new perspective. So, but theologically, I can't think of anything particularly there. But Robin and I are always growing and challenging and tweaking. And I think of truth as being like a game of darts. You've got a target and you want to hit the bullseye. Being on the target's good, but the bullseye is the loneliest place on the target. It's the smallest
Mm.
place. But I always want to keep getting to the bullseye. And so anything that gets me closer to that bullseye, that's I'm willing to make a change. And I want to know the truth above all
Oh,
things.
isn't that that's hitting the mark? Like we it's my favorite topic when we talk about people are so concerned about sin from that religious spirit. I'm like, no, 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 you're just missing the mark. It's just an adjustment. It's katat. It's just let's just make the adjustment and get to the center. And that's why I'm always saying my understanding today is this, because it can change tomorrow and it needs an adjustment to get me to the center. And I just want to be near him and he's in the middle. That's all I want.
Some people don't have the mental freedom to do that. And I think I
Mm.
figured out why. Being raised in the evangelical church, kind of strict Baptist, I realized in when I was about, well, in my late 20s, I realized I had not depended on Yeshua for my salvation. I depended on my theology for my salvation.
Okay.
Now think about it. If you believe, if you think, if I just believe everything exactly right, then I'm saved, but if my theology's off, I might be in trouble. Theology is your God. And when someone
Mm.
questions your theology, it feels blasphemous because they're challenging my God, my idol. But when I made that shift, I am saved by what Yeshua did, not by what I think about what he did. What he did on the cross, that is where my salvation lies. When you're secure in what he did, now I can take my theology and just disassemble it, reconstruct it. Some things go, other things stay, and you're always tweaking. It's like you moved into a house, you're always changing things and fixing things. And I want my theology to align with truth. And I'm not threatened if something my theology is proves to be inaccurate. Then let's fix it. Because my salvation is in my Messiah. That's solid
Amen.
as a rock, can't be shaken, can't be lost. And
Amen.
it's too big to lose.
Amen. And if you just happen to be here today and you have just randomly come across this, or maybe you're deep into learning about the Hebraic roots of faith and of the word, and someone said to be on here, but you don't know Yeshua as your Messiah, I want to invite you to that. I want to invite you to spend some time alone and ask him to have an encounter with him. I'm not going to give you some prayer that you should pray, but spend some time with him and say, look, I want you to be Messiah to me in a real way, in a personal encounter, and he'll show up. He'll be there
Well,
and walk you through it, and reach out to us if there's any way we can help guide you through it. Please, however, also on podcast, I want you to look for Torah Today. I want you to, where else, is there anywhere else I'm missing that they can find you?
well, our website, TorahTodayMinistries.org, because there you can print out the notes for all the teachings. I have all the notes, so it's nice to print those out to go up. And then, of course, YouTube and almost all the podcast platforms are there. And I just finished a series. It's only 4 teachings on the body, soul, and spirit. And I don't think anything I've done has gotten um, more attention than that, more feedback than those 4 teachings. The 4th one actually goes up on Monday. But it seems like people are talking about the salvation of the soul and And a lot of believers don't realize we have a spirit. We have a body and we have a spirit. And there's so much confusion about this. And so I did this series of 4 teachings, and people have found it really, really helpful. So that might be a good place to start.
That's a great place to start. Would you close us out in prayer? Please pray for those listening, and thank you again and for being here. What a blessing.
And I want you to know my misfit sheep, I made them sound like they were weird, but they were spiritually, we were all spiritually misfit. We didn't fit in anywhere else. They are the most wonderful people on the planet.
They are amazing. We know your heart. We know that for sure.